Prophets and soothsayers come and go, but one name that stays firm within English legend and folklore is that of Mother Shipton. Shipton was born during the reign of Henry VII in 1488. Her maiden name was Ursula Southeil. Henry VII was father to Henry VIII, who is probably one of the most famous of the Old English kings. In case you were wondering, the name Southeil has a meaning of creativity, curiosity, charm, friendliness and cheer. Little is known about Ursula's parents through historic records. Legend has it that she was born during a thunderstorm in a cave on the banks of the River Nid in Knaresborough, England. Her mother, Agatha, was just 15 years old when she gave birth. The poor girl was dragged before local magistrates to confess who the father was. Regardless, she would not reveal the name of the father. My suspicion is that Ursula's biological father was either in a position of nobility and therefore would cause great embarrassment to himself or family, or worse, she was a victim of a rape and will face a harsher level of social castration for the already frightened and impoverished girl. Without a family support network or real friends, Agatha was said to have raised her child in a cave on her own for about 2 years. Sometime soon after that, the Abbot of Beverley took pity on them and secured a place in a convent believed to be the Order of St. Bridget for Agatha. He placed Ursula, however, in a foster family in Knaresborough. Unfortunately, Agatha and Ursula would never see each other again, as Agatha died 7 years later. Ursula grew up around Knaresborough. She was a strange child both in looks and behaviour, having a large nose and a crooked back. Her legs were also deformed and twisted. She was taunted and teased by the locals in the village, as is often the case. Therefore, in time, she decided she was better off on her own. She spent most of her days in and around the local caves where she was born. There, it seemed, she found some respite from the constant harassment. Ursula liked to study the local flora and fauna. In that sphere, she learnt to use many of the local herbs. She also learnt to make remedies and potions with them also. When she was about 24 years of age, Ursula met and fell for a young man by the name of Tobias Shipton. Tobias was a carpenter by trade from the city of York. Sadly, Tobias died a few years later and before they had any children. However, Ursula kept his name Shipton. The mother salutation followed when Ursula was much older. It's believed this was a form of reverence rather than any direct biological responsibility. It's worth pointing out historically men wielded a lot of social power, making it advantageous for spouses to keep their partner's name. Ursula was naturally creative. As well as making traditional remedies, she had another gift, an uncanny ability to predict the future. Starting off with small premonitions, she practiced and became more confident as her abilities grew. She was soon known as Knaresborough's prophetess and likened to a witch. Ursula made a living telling the future, warning those who asked of what was to come, up until her death in 1560. Looking at all of this carefully, we have a widower who must survive, having no other male figures in her life. The merits of being somewhat entrepreneurial and industrious was not lost on her, and if she could use her skills to sustain herself, who would begrudge her of that? Like most tales, dating back centuries, some details can be traced to factual events, while others can be classified as loosely strung conjecture. As a matter of fact, people back then just didn't keep records that detailed for many reasons, not least for the ability to read and write. Recording of legible data was a skill left to the educated and wealthy. Since the 17th century, there have been more than 50 different editions of books about Mother Shipton and her prophecies. Some prefer to tell her life story in considerable detail. Again, how much of this is fact or fiction is anybody's guess, as only limited records exist. One of the earliest accounts of Shipton was said to have been told by a Joanne Waller, who recorded her sayings before Shipton died soon after at a great age of 94. Joanne, as a young girl, had spent time and listened to Mother Shipton. As Ursula had no children, we know all we do from anecdotal accounts and hearsay. But again, we cannot be sure how much is legend. What we can agree with is that about 500 years ago, a woman who went by the salutation of Mistress Shipton resided in Knaresborough, Yorkshire, England. And When she made prophecies, people believed them. They passed on her prophecies verbally and occasionally in literal form, supporting Mother Shipton's existence, at least from a historical perspective. Just as Nostradamus wrote in quatrains, Mother Shipton generally made her prophecies in rhymes. Some academics understand as part of a mnemonic strategy helping memorization, this approach was quite common in the bygone era, where committing ideas to legible format was not as easy or sometimes even dangerous. Statistically, the prophecies made may not have been all accurate. Indeed, it's possible some may have been embellished over the centuries. Regardless, Mother Shipton remains one of those enigmatic historical figures bedded into the depths of our imagination. The first publication of Mother Shipton could be found in Morrison's Prophecies, and it did not appear until some people got to work around 80 years after her death. This collation of information contains several original predictions, as one would expect. However, they only contain 2 prophetic verses. It is said Mother Shipton foretold of the Great Fire of London, and that the royal family were said to have heard and even discussed her prophecies. Yet, here again, this could all be hearsay and gossiping for the purpose of creativity. The most famous of Mother Shipton's prophecies foretells of many modern events. Carriages without horses shall go, and accidents fill the world with woe. Around the world faults shall fly in the twinkling of an eye. The world upside down shall be, and gold be found at the root of a tree. Through hills man shall ride, and no horse be at his side. Under water men shall walk, shall sleep, shall talk. In the air shall be seen, in white, in black, in green. In water iron then shall float, as easy as a wooden boat. Gold shall be found and shown in a land that's not now known. Fire and water shall wonders do. England at last admit a foe. The world to an end shall come in 1881. Mother Shipton became tied with many tragedies recorded all over the United Kingdom, Australia and North America throughout the 17th and 18th and 19th centuries. Many fortune tellers used her effigy and statues, and many pubs were named after her. However, only 2 survive, one in Nesborough and the other in Portsmouth, where a life-size statue of her is placed above a door. A small moth, native to Yorkshire countryside, is named after her. This insect seemingly bears a profile of a hag's head on each wing. It is said by some Mother Shipton predicted the fate of several kingships within and after her lifetime. Also, that Mother Shipton envisioned the invention of ships made of steel and even the end of the world. But as always, these things can be argued, as they contain a mixture of supposition and limited facts. In summary, what are we to make of all this? Is it merely the result of hearsay, tittle-tattle, and intended fabrication? In the light of modern analysis, it's difficult for anyone to know where one tale starts and the other ends. Perhaps it's better to admit it's unclear, and that the truth of the matter, it all lies somewhere in between. When one reviews recorded accounts, anecdotes, and some of her predictions, comparing known posthumous events separated by hundreds of years, it does give one a pause for thought. Well, thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and don't forget to subscribe and click the like button, and we'll see you soon.